I want to make clear that this program has a very long and extensive list of having no friends, and a long record of that, and a long list of people that hate my guts that used to be my friend. I still, in many cases, still hold them as friends. I just can't support them anymore because they've flip-flopped or whatever. And that usually happens. And quite honestly, because as Orrin Hatch said at one point, which should have said something about Orrin Hatch, to Orrin Hatch, I've never seen a man enter this chamber and leave a better man. So it's just a matter of time before they just, are worn down by the battery acid of politics. But one guy who I do not think has changed one bit is Mike Lee. I have not seen, and I watch him because I've told him, Mike, if you go dark, I'm just going to have to just get out of this business. Because if you go dark, there's no chance. I mean, you have the best chance of being that beacon, and we have to have somebody that is educated on the Constitution and is reasonable, rational, isn't a firebomber, but holds true to that Constitution. And so I'm watching him because I will tell him. And if it means that I destroy a friendship, well, then I destroy a friendship. I've done it before. In fact, I do it every time with everyone in Washington because they always go dark. Mike Lee has not. And so I was really disturbed when I read this story about him flip-flopping in Google, and there's, Google payouts and everything else. In looking at this, first of all, it's Tom Steyer. So he's a George Soros type that is funding this attack on Mike Lee. Tucker Carlson goes on and he does this big Mike Lee is a flip-flopper. Well, he's not a flip-flopper if you do your homework. Mike Lee, and there's a big explanation, a really good explanation of what Mike is doing, and you can find it at lee.senate.gov, and you can and read the article for yourself. I urge you to read this article. The story is that he flip-flopped because they did, Google is all over, cooking the books, if you will, on their search engine. And Mike Lee is very well aware of it. I've spoken to him multiple times over the last couple of months for sure. But it's an ongoing conversation. I know he's aware of it, and he is trying to find the ways that are legal, constitutional, that don't cut any corners, because Mike knows once you start undermining the Constitution in any way, you are going to turn it all over to politicians, and they will just destroy everything. So I invite you to read that at Mike Lee's website and really read it and try to understand what Mike is saying. But let me just read a couple of the emails that I got from Mike yesterday. He said, Glenn, we have to resist the impulse to conclude that because big tech does some really bad things that we don't like, that means that antitrust laws hold a remedy. He says that what's happening right now is politicians, and this is a movement from the left, that what they really want to do is change the way we do antitrust. Antitrust, he has made it very clear for 10 years that antitrust should be about consumer welfare, not politics. So if Google, his complaint on Google is they're stacking the deck and they're pointing you to things that they own, things that they get kickbacks on, as well as politics, where you can't find the truth. And that is costing you more money. And so antitrust must be about the consumer and consumers' welfare. But there is this movement now that the left is trying to change the antitrust law so that consumer welfare is no longer the governing standard. It seeks to jettison the modern evidence-based focus on protecting competition in favor of a long-abandoned approach that bases antitrust enforcement on purely political objectives. So Mike writes to me and says, look, we have to hold this back. We can't let the antitrust laws be used by politicians, even if we agree. He said, I fear what precedent this might set where political lines have been drawn in a business setting. Then he points me to the website to read more about it, and I have. And he writes back, and he says, this is the problem with the hatchet job that is being done right now. And I assume that is not only by Tom Steyer and the left, but also I would put Tucker Carlson into that category. He says, Tucker hasn't explained what it is that I've done wrong, just that I am wrong and that I flip-flopped. He doesn't acknowledge that I'm a lawmaker and I am speaking, and he is framing it that I am speaking as if I were a law enforcement officer. I'm not a law enforcement officer. So what do? I'm open to ideas, but don't believe existing antitrust laws provide a remedy for what people hate. And they believe, and I believe there are risks trying to shoehorn something into existing law. This is one of the conversations that Mike and I had over lunch about 4 weeks ago. He's like, Glenn, it seems so easy. He said, but you have to understand everything is a can of worms. And if you open it up, you better be sure that solves the problem and doesn't create other problems. So this is not about, campaign donations or Google moving into the state or investing in his state. It has nothing to do with that. And if it does, if it ever did, or if it ever does, you will hear it from me. And I will have, you've heard me do it before. I will have those people on. And as I told Mike, the very first time we spoke, if you're not exactly what you say you are, if you start fooling around, I will become your worst stinking nightmare. You have heard me do it before. I'll do it with Mike Lee. But this is trumped up bullcrap that is coming from the left. Do not be fooled by it.